Singapore.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Marshall Cease, and we're going to talk about the possibility of severe weather later this evening, perhaps in the Northeast and New England. So you want to stay tuned for that. And got some tropical developments out there that are very interesting in the Atlantic Basin. We're just after the peak of the year now. Let's start out with your tropical update and take a look at the second week of September, September 11th through the 20th. Today is September 15th, by the way, if you haven't looked at the calendar yet. And there's been 103 storms over the last 111 years, almost anywhere they've developed. The Caribbean, the Atlantic, off the coast of Florida and Gulf of Mexico, you name it. How are we doing so far this season? Well, typically in a season, you get 9 named storms, and we've already had 6 this year. We've had 3 hurricanes, and so we're right at half here, and we've had 1 major hurricane. That was Bonnie. And so we're right at half there as well. As the next one forms, it'll be Georges. And we've already been through Francis, another big tropical moisture producer and rainmaker out of the Gulf of Mexico. Had Charlie, and then we had Francis that created just incredible amounts of rain. We've had a trough, kind of an elongated trough out of the Gulf of Mexico across Old Mexico. And I don't know if you've read in the newspaper, but there's a state in south of Mexico, Chiapas, which is down here in the southern extent of Mexico. And the coast, the Pacific coast, has seen incredible amounts of rain. Rain has finally ended there, but towns are under seas of mud. One town, Valdivia, which is right on the coast here. They're still looking for, there's like 5,000 residents that haven't been accounted for in this town buried in mud. President of Mexico saying the worst natural disaster since the 1985 earthquake. Very, very bad situation here, and a lot of that is due to that tropical trough that is just stagnant over the Gulf of Mexico and over Mexico. Now, as we look in the Gulf of Mexico first, we used to have the stream of moisture bumping into the lower 48 states. Tropical storm formation not imminent here. Some of the computer models, though, are indicating that a wave in the western Caribbean will continue to develop, perhaps go through the Yucatan Channel here, then over 48 hours or so emerge as a low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico and then continue to head to the north-northwest. So we're going to be watching this area. It has been encountering a lot of shear from the north, but that shear is lessening, and if this convection that's developing right now, for example, would hold together and begin to drift, well, we could see some tropical storm formation. It would be slow in evolving, but definitely an area to watch. This wave moved through the Lesser Antilles yesterday, brought some showers and some thunderstorms to the islands, but that's about it. Out west, nothing going on in the mid-Atlantic, but the further east you go, the more production that we find of a tropical nature. First, we have this one that yesterday looked pretty impressive, perhaps a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but ships in the neighborhood were saying winds weren't all that big, even though the pressure was down to about 1,005 millibars, I think. Now, this system that rolled off the African coast is very impressive, and if it does not get caught up in this trough to its west, this could make it all the way across the Atlantic. This could become a tropical depression. Looks like pressures here are around 1,008 millibars. And we've got another impressive area of disturbed weather that's going to move off the African coast too. So this is a hotbed of activity this morning that we're going to be watching through this week and weekend. Out to the west along the intertropical convergence zone, the Pacific, nothing much going on out here. We do have something going on here, though. We have Typhoon Stella packing winds about 75 miles per hour. It's headed to the north toward the south coast of Japan. Forecast to go onshore, make landfall west of Tokyo, and that puts Tokyo in the north and right quadrant of this thing, which means they'll get substantial winds at Tokyo, and then it'll move across Japan and then back out to sea, head over toward Alaska. Well, we still have the moisture stream here. It's interacting with a front in the northeast, and late today we expect severe weather to occur in southern New York State, northeast Pennsylvania. That includes places like Boston and Hartford, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So be on the lookout this afternoon. Meanwhile, can't rule out a strong storm in any of these other areas.
Wet weather lingers in parts of the south and plains in the wake of Tropical Storm Francis. An update on rain and flooding and when it could end next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by Nationwide Insurance.
She came to Nationwide for auto and life insurance. Our homeowners helped him after a fire. They needed help planning for retirement. For these different needs, Nationwide Insurance offers different solutions. Auto.
Thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. We do see some more heavy rains today from Texas spreading northeastward up into Arkansas. We'll check on that with radars in just a moment. But first, there's a new depression in the Atlantic. With all the details, with our tropical update, here's our tropical expert, Mr. John Hope.
Well, Mark, that tropical depression is way out in the Atlantic. I'll get to that in just a minute. I wanted to show you this long loop to begin with. Of a little more immediate concern, perhaps, is what's going on here in this part of the world, what's going on in the Caribbean Sea. We seem to have a tropical low developing there. There's a good chance this is going to be a depression. It's right over here to the south of Cuba and to the west of the Grand Cayman Islands. And it does show pretty definite signs of getting better developed this morning. And we believe that that will go ahead and develop and be a depression, which is going to move into the Gulf of Mexico. Hate to tell you folks around the Gulf that. I know you've just had to deal with Francis. You're not ready for another one. But nevertheless, if you live around the Gulf, you want to keep track of what's happening here. And then far out in the Atlantic, right out here on the edge of your picture, we have a brand new tropical depression. I'll give you a bit more on that later. First of all, we'll turn our attention more to the Gulf and the Caribbean. Now, right down in the Caribbean, right in here, we're getting a tropical low develop. And looking at the analysis this morning in the upper airflow, conditions are gradually getting more favorable for some kind of development here. This tropical low pressure that was inhibiting that development is moving on to the west, sort of getting out of the way, so to speak. And what we have here in the West Gulf, we're still looking at some showers. A lot of moisture from left over from France is still feeding up into Texas, where they've been getting some pretty heavy rains. But right in there is where the new development is, and we think that's going to slide up slowly through the Yucatan Channel and into the Gulf over the next couple of days. And very likely is going to be classified as a depression, certainly within the next day or so, even perhaps sooner than that. And looking now out over the Atlantic Ocean, nothing much to worry about out there at all until we get to our depression, which is out here in the East Atlantic. And here then are the particulars on the depression that just formed. 9.0 north, 25.9 west. That's 400 miles south-southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. It is moving rather rapidly toward the west at about 21 miles per hour. But I have to tell you now, it's a long ways away from the Caribbean. It's over 2,500 miles from Barbados, and it's about 3,500 miles or so from Miami. But it is moving west, and we expect it to stay at fairly low latitude, so folks in the Caribbean need to keep track. No threat yet, but we'll have to size up here what's going to happen over the next couple of days. Now here is that depression getting better organized as time goes by. We can see clearly on a visible picture we have a good circulation there, and this is a pretty rapid movement, again moving toward the west about 21 miles per hour. Well, it's fitting that it would still be active in the Atlantic. We're just a few days past the peak of the season, which was on the 10th of September. And now on the Eastern Pacific, nothing to worry about there, no kind of development. So we're going to take it way out to the West Pacific, where we have Stella bearing down on Japan. This is a typhoon. Even at Tokyo, they're beginning to increase the wind and rain. So that's going to make a direct hit on Honshu, I think just to the west of Tokyo. They're going to be in the right front quadrant, get some very heavy rain out of that. Well, let's go back to Mark and see what he can tell us about some heavy rain. Mark?
Okay, thank you very much, John. And boy, it's been soggy here in the lower 48 in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana over the past 24 hours. And early this morning, you can see that the rains have been continuing in the same area, so the moisture continues to ride up out of the Gulf of Mexico. Another place that's been very wet is South Florida. Let's take you to the radar here and check this out. Tropical downpour is coming up through the Keys and through Dade and Broward counties. That's now pushing up towards the Naples area. So if you are planning on traveling to South Florida today, you will hit blinding rains and just terrible traveling conditions. Weather Center is next.
Rain and showers extend from the Gulf Coast to the Midwest, and the wet weather's moving into the Northeast. When and where storms are likely next on Weather Center.
Plunger. Spud wrench.
Hello.
In my mind, Bart the greeter parrot would end up being as friendly and knowledgeable as our True Value salespeople.
Quarter inch variable speed drill.
In reality, he was, well, just friendly. Come on, Bart.
What's wrong?
Phone bill came.
Dad's mad?
Very mad.
Feeling bad?
Feeling dumb.
How come?
Didn't dial 10-10-321.
10-10-321.
Should have dialed 10-10-321.
Cheaper than AT&T.
On every call in the U.S.
Anything else?
50% off all calls over 20 minutes.
50%?
50%.
Day or night?
Night or day.
What about international?
Great rates.
Just dial 10-10-321.
Then one, and the number as usual.
No fees?
No sign up.
Just dial.
And save.
Wow, you are dumb.
For 97 years, GMC has designed trucks for people who drove them not because they were trendy, but because their lives depended on them. Heroes who measured a truck home.
Good evening to you. Thanks for tuning in to Storm Watch. Coming up shortly, I have a look at a Texas radar, also some rain in Florida. That's coming up after Dr. Steve Lyons tells us more about our tropical update, where we're looking for a new tropical storm in the Atlantic and the possibility of something else going on in the southern Gulf. Steve?
Well, thanks, Rich. The tropics are rather interesting tonight, and I'll show you a couple of interesting features. First of all, we've got something brewing here in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got a tropical depression far out in the Atlantic, and we've got a typhoon affecting the coast of Japan. First, let's take a look here at the Gulf of Mexico. We have two areas of disturbed weather. One is over here in the western Gulf of Mexico. This is still that persistent trough of low pressure that's lingered back behind Francis, which is long gone by now. And associated with it, there's a very weak area of low pressure here along that low pressure trough axis, and that's producing quite a bit of shower activity down here towards Brownsville, and the whole area is pushing slowly to the west, so we don't expect much out of that. The area we're really most interested in right now is down here off the northeast corner of the Yucatan Peninsula here. You can see some clouds brewing up in here. We have an upper level low pressure center in here, and on the east side of that's causing a lot of thunderstorm activity, and associated with that is that low pressure system here that we think is going to move into the central Gulf of Mexico the next 24 to 36 hours. Now you can see it better here on the larger picture. A lot of very warm, moist air coming out of the deep tropics way down in the southern Caribbean Sea, coming up in here, fueling this low pressure center here. We expect this thing to potentially become a tropical depression or so in the next few days. We'll have to keep our eyes on that very carefully as we watch it. The rest of the Caribbean is relatively free of any tropical cyclone development. We have a weak trough of low pressure in the mid-troposphere, and that's moving across toward the west past Puerto Rico and will affect the Dominican Republic the next 24 hours or so. Other than that, we have generally southeasterly flow in the Caribbean and not too much to worry about. Now, as we go into the central Atlantic Ocean,
great news there. The islands out here have cleared out nicely from all the thunder shower activity, and they'll continue to be very nice the next 24 to 36 hours. Not much going on here at all, except a few stratocumulus clouds, low-level clouds of no real consequence. We do have, however, in the extreme eastern Atlantic, tropical depression number 7 as of 5 p.m. was located at 9.5 north, 27.4 west, and that was about 420 miles south-southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. Here are the Cape Verdes, here's Africa here, low pressure center here, and the islands way over here. This is at least a 5-day journey or so to the Windward or Leeward Islands here, so a long way away. Winds are 35 miles per hour. It needs to be 39 or higher for tropical storm, and it's moving fairly quickly to the west at about 20 miles per hour. Here's what it looks like on the satellite imagery. It came off the coast as a rather impressive thunderstorm area, and the circulation center is actually located down here in the smaller area of thunderstorm activity rather than up here, but it's a rather vigorous low pressure center, and it'll continue to move in a general westward track. The next few days we'll keep you monitoring what's going on with that, and keep in mind, anytime we have disturbed weather in the tropics this time of year in the heart of the hurricane season, you can expect things to potentially develop much more likely than what we had in June, July, and even into the August time frame. Now in the Pacific, because we had a trough of low pressure here that's over the Central America area, and a surge of westerly winds that are coming in, fueling that low-level cyclonic circulation that's off the Yucatan Peninsula, all of the weather is over and off the coast and not much going on in the Pacific at all, so we're in good shape there. Now, as we go out in the extreme western Pacific, long way out there, we typically have, well, I thought we had, there we go. We have Typhoon here. This is Typhoon Stella. It's now skirting the coast of Japan and moving off very quickly to the northeast here in the next 12 to 24 hours, off at about 25 to 30 miles per hour. We're going to get some heavy rain, but it'll be gone here very shortly. Well, let's get back to Rich and see what's going on with that rain in Florida.
All right, thank you, Steve. First of all, as we check the thunderstorm outlook, some storms in Florida, South Texas, all the way up to around Detroit. You might see some weather coming on in, as well as southern New England. First of all, to Texas, scattered showers and thunderstorms, very heavy rain in some locations near Victoria. More rain also in Florida, heavy showers near Miami, up toward West Palm especially, so rainy in South Florida tonight. More about this and your forecast right after this.
From the Gulf Coast to the Northeast, folks are getting rain and thunderstorms. We'll tell you where the wet weather is headed next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Boy, come on, we gotta go. Get the screen on. The screen's stuck. Hey! You stay away from here! Rory!
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Under 9 minutes now till the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Warren Madden, and you've joined us in time for Storm Watch as we continue to track the latest tropical depression in the Atlantic, an area of disturbed weather in the northern Caribbean Sea, and we'll also, after we take a look at the tropics, come back home to the United States and follow some wet weather anywhere from Texas on up into New England. But let's start it off with visiting the tropics with our tropical update. And what we've got out there is an area of thunderstorms south of Cuba, some of them running up over central and western Cuba. And these thunderstorms have been hanging together for a while. And anytime you get a cluster of thunderstorms that is persistent, you have to start thinking, especially this time of the year, will we see it develop a low-level circulation and start developing into a tropical depression? We do have a low-pressure center here somewhere between western Cuba heading over in toward the Yucatan Peninsula, and this whole area is forecast to move farther to the north and west during the next couple of days, and we could potentially see a development of a tropical depression out of this area over the next day or two. So please be on the lookout as this starts to move, and stay tuned to the Weather Channel. We'll keep you posted as this system potentially does develop, and we'll let you know of any latest advisories or what happens with any kind of classification of the system from the National Hurricane Center. We head farther out into the Atlantic now, and boy, not much happening though in the central Atlantic here, as we do have our intertropical convergence zone fairly far to the south, and this area here almost cloud-free and certainly convection-free, an area of fairly stable air, and it is this area of stable air that Tropical Depression 7 is going to have to traverse before it can make it any closer to the United States. As of 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, TD7 centered 430 miles southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, moving westward at 17 miles an hour with top winds of 35 miles an hour. Central pressure at 1,006 millibars. Here's the system here. You can see it does have a circulation here. You can see a little bit of a spin, not too much in the way of convection grouped around the center right now, but it is still early in the life of the system. But again, it is going to have to spend a lot of time tracking across the Atlantic, and it has to get across that area of very stable air. It's akin to saying to a traveler, okay, cross this desert in order to get to the water on the other side. That's what this system is going to have to do. We'll have to watch it and let you know if it develops over the next couple of days, but right now it is a tropical depression with top winds of 35 miles an hour. We head to the Pacific Ocean, where in the eastern Pacific off the coast of Mexico, not much going on. You can see our monsoon trough extending off of Central America, but nothing is spinning up. So really no problems here in the eastern Pacific. But the western Pacific is another matter entirely. Typhoon Stella battering the coast of Japan. Tokyo has seen typhoon force winds up above 73 miles an hour. And if that wasn't enough, we also have a new developing system, which is Tropical Storm Todd here east of the Philippines. And this is also forecast to move northward, so two active systems in the western Pacific. Let's leave the tropics now. Let's come on back home to the United States, where we have a stationary front here that is triggering off rain and thunderstorms anywhere from New England all the way south to the Texas Gulf Coast. And we do have areas of strong thunderstorms painted in here. The largest of that is here in New York, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and over into much of New England. We've seen wind gusts up to 63 miles an hour, one wind gust at Logan Airport not too many hours ago. Here's the situation right now. You can see our rain bands. In eastern Texas, we do have flash flood watches out after all the rain that you received from Tropical Storm Francis. More rain could cause further problems, and here you can see that rain scattered across eastern Texas and into western Louisiana. Farther north, we have rain also coming up into the Ozarks and up in Little Rock, not quite into the Ozarks, but certainly into central Arkansas. Not too much happening right now in Florida, but as we head northward into New England, we do have some showers and storms, especially in northern.
Continued rain keeps parts of Florida and the Gulf Coast soggy. Find out what's in store for that area and yours. Stay tuned for Weather Center right after your local forecast.